Footballers attracted a lot of attention at all times, and unsurprisingly so. Football is the most popular sport, and millions of people consider footballers their idols.
Not so long ago, Dani Alves was arrested. The Brazilian will most likely face from 4 to 12 years in prison, as it doesn't look like he's going to get away with it.
Goal 24 presents you a football team with players sentenced to some days or even years. A small quiz before we start. Many players do feel sorry for what they've done, so whose squad is this? I gave all I had, now I want to enjoy my family. Got the answer? Let's go then. Goalkeeper René Higuita. Though René hardly played outside of Latin and Central America, everybody knows his name. It is all because of his legendary scorpion kick save as well as his free kicks and penalties. That's what made him famous, but very few know that the keeper spent 7 months in jail. Higuita was accused of accessory to kidnapping. In May 1993, the daughter of crime boss Luis Carlos Molina was kidnapped, and the one behind that was Pablo Escobar. What does that have to do with Higuita? The keeper was the conduit as he gave Escobar the $385,000 ransom, and for that he received $64,000 from Molina. The sum wasn't enough to pay off the police though. He was also meant to be charged for drug possession and trafficking, but there wasn't enough evidence. It hurts to have lost so much time. I could have spent it with my wife, training, playing football or learning new moves, said René after he was released. Despite the lack of evidence, the Colombian had to spend 7 months in jail, so he missed the World Cup in the USA. Centre-back Benjamin Mendy. When the media first wrote of the Frenchman being detained, you might have thought it was either a lockdown violation or drunk driving. But it turned out to be way more serious, as Mendy was accused of 4 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault against 3 alleged victims over the age of 16. City's only statement was, Manchester City can confirm that following his being charged by police today, Benjamin Mendy has been suspended pending an investigation. The matter is subject to a legal process, and the club is therefore unable to make further comment until the process is completed. The hearing, at which the charges were dealt with, took place on September 10. The trial extended his arrest until January 24. A man called Louisa Maturi faced the same charges, and neither he nor Mendy pleaded guilty or made any statements. Mendy was even denied a bail. Why would a successful footballer do things like that? That's a big question. Centre-back Tony Adams. The Englishman spent 19 years at Arsenal, winning 700 caps and 12 trophies for the club. Tony is the true Gunners legend in spite of his excessive lifestyle caused by alcohol. In the 90s and early 2000s, footballers boozing was not that big a deal, especially in England. Players did drink a lot, and that was no shock, as their drunken antics merely amused the publicity. So Tony Adams and his teammates Lee Dixon, Martin Keown and Nigel Winterburn got nicknamed the Drunk Defense. My daily dose is 20 pints of beer and some bottles of wine before I go to sleep, Adams explained. But it stopped being funny in May 1990. Adams got drunk at a party and went back home by car. He lost control and put his Ford through a brick wall at a very high speed. His alcohol level was 4 times off the legal drink-drive limit, and it was a miracle no one was hurt. Tony hoped he could avoid the sentence, but the judge turned out to be a man of principle, so the footballer was sentenced to 4 months imprisonment. In 2 months, however, he was released. As the footballer admitted, the worst thing was sharing a cell with a Tottenham fan. Adams didn't give up drinking though. Only after many years Tony managed to get over it and now does charity work. Centre-back Harry Maguire. The most expensive defender has never drawn much attention off the pitch until last August, when all of England was discussing the incident involving the player. Harry was on vacation in Greece with his friends when he was detained for a fight outside a bar. The incident occurred in the evening as a group of English tourists started abusing Maguire and Manchester United until Harry's friends stood up for him. When the police showed up, it was over as Maguire told them to get lost and eventually attacked an officer. The detainees kept on arguing in the police station and even offered a bribe before being put to jail. As a result, Maguire and his two friends spent 2 days behind bars before they stood trial. The Man United captain was charged with assaulting a police officer, resisting arrest, battering, and attempting bribery. The footballer denied everything, along with his lawyer. I don't feel I owe an apology to anybody. An apology is something when you have done something wrong. I think it could have happened anywhere to anybody. I was scared for my life, Harry said. The Greek trial found Maguire guilty and he was given a suspended sentence of 21 months and 10 days. The local media were unhappy with the verdict as they believed the trial was too lenient because of Harry being a famous footballer, for otherwise he could have been sentenced to 2 years in prison. So Harry and his friends got away with it, and Maguire wasn't involved in any incidents afterwards. Right midfielder Adam Johnson. The story of Johnson made quite a stir back in the days. An ex-Sunderland player was in his prime when his career was cut short. In winter 2016, Adam was arrested and accused of child molestation and sexual relations with an underage girl. It was about a 15-year-old Sunderland she fan who admired Adam. She would meet him by the stadium after every game and eventually they started seeing each other. Johnson got 6 years, though the prosecution asked for 10. Both Sunderland and Adidas, the sponsor, terminated their contracts with Johnson immediately and his partner Stacey left him as well. The footballer tried to appeal many times and even had to sell his fancy house to get money for lawyers, but still failed to avoid the sentence. While in prison, the Englishman was working as a cleaner and as a barber and was assaulted by other convicts. In the end, Adam's lawyers proved him not guilty of rape, so he was released after serving half of his sentence in 2019. He didn't announce his retirement, yet even non-league clubs don't want him now. And Adam himself may now be seen in pubs with young ladies. His family is still being abused, as the word pedophile keeps appearing on their house door. Now Adam is unemployed and what will become of him we are yet to know. Centre midfielder Gylfi Sigurdsson. The media wrote of the Everton player being detained in July. The name of the footballer wasn't mentioned. It was only said he's 31, married and a current international. There are only 2 Everton players who are 31 and married, Fabian Delph and Gylfi Sigurdsson. But the Englishman hasn't played for the national team since 2019. Sigurdsson is suspected of child sex offenses. The police arrested the footballer, searched his house and confiscated a number of things, supposedly his computer and other gadgets where the messages and photos might be. According to recent information, however, it's about the correspondence and not the actual contact. Everton refused to comment and made the only statement. Everton can confirm it has suspended a first-team player pending a police investigation. The club will continue to support the authorities with their inquiries and will not be making any further statement at this time. Gylfi is now in custody and pleads not guilty. He's already lost 2 advertisers and his future in Everton is far from clear. After several appeals, Gylfi was released on bail, but the club is still reluctant to let him back in the squad. Left midfielder Jermaine Pennant. Pennant was incredibly talented, but various challenges prevented him from living up to his potential. His mother left him when he was only 3, and his father subsequently got addicted to psychotropic drugs. Add a bad neighborhood to that, and you'll see where his troubles with the police come from. Pennant has been to a police station many times, whether it was petty theft, fight or public drinking. The youngster still performed really well against his adult opponents. Jermaine scored a hat-trick on his Arsenal debut right off a wild party. Frankly speaking, drinking did go hand in hand with the Englishman's career. Wenger would overlook that as he hoped loan spells could bring the young one to reason. The new contract with the Gunners was ready, but it was not meant to be. Because of alcohol, of course. Jermaine got drunk at a party and took a car from the Tottenham defender Anthony Gardner, then hit a lamppost and when the police arrived, introduced himself as Ashley Cole. What is more, Pennant had no right to drive as he had been already caught driving drunk a year earlier and his ban was to expire in just a week. As a result, the footballer got a 3-month sentence. He spent 1 month in a solitary cell and then was transferred to house arrest. Remarkably, he was still allowed to play, so he spent one match wearing an ankle bracelet. Though Arsenal later decided not to prolong his contract, Jermaine moved to Birmingham. He didn't quit drinking, however, as he fought the addiction throughout his whole career. Attacking midfielder Diego Maradona. The controversies are what Diego's life was all about, and it will take days to mention all of them. Shooting a journalist from a BB gun, brawling at an airport, violating the traffic rules. He is also believed to have crashed his Jeep into a phone box. 2 people got injured, though Diego got away with that. The Italian police thought he was linked to the Neapolitan mafia. There was no evidence, however, to get him arrested. But eventually the police got him. In 1991, he admitted doing drugs in order to deal with his stress and got a 15-month ban. When Maradona was back home, he was arrested and accused of drug possession as the police had found 36 grams of cocaine in his house. Diego was released in 4 days after a huge bail to get probation afterwards. 4 years passed and the footballer was brought before a court once again for assault. The request from the prosecution was a 4-year sentence, but Diego got away with probation that time as well. Despite all that, you can't help but admire Maradona as he did love football and lived to the full. Indeed, we lack footballers of that kind these days. Right winger George Best. In 1969, I gave up women and alcohol. It was the worst 20 minutes of my life. This quote by George Best sums up his life philosophy. One of the greatest of all times, he loved having fun more than he loved football. Spending time with women, brawling in pubs, having conflicts with policemen, showing up drunk before a game. None of that stopped him from playing incredible football year after year. We must admit that George didn't have any serious legal problems before he joined Man United, but then he let himself go. In 1984, the footballer was arrested for drunk driving and assaulting a police officer. He had to spend 3 months in prison, including New Year holidays. George hoped he could get away with probation, though the judge had no mercy for football star and the media considered that a public punishment for his numerous violations. However, George Best remained George Best even behind bars. Well, I suppose that's the knighthood. While in prison, George kept his chin up, made friends with other convicts and played a couple of games there. After he was released, his life was back to normal as the footballer kept drinking and having fun with pretty ladies. Left winger Ronaldinho. The Brazilian legend was just as talented as Ronaldo and Messi, though his life had never been about football only. During his final years at Barca, he would spend more time partying than training. Ronaldinho had quite a number of legal troubles, though it was mainly because of his brother Roberto, as he was the one to get into something illegal. But still, he was a bad influence on the footballer. Last March, Ronaldinho came back to Paraguay for a charity event and was arrested for using a fake Paraguayan passport to enter the country. It could all be perfectly legal, however, for the Brazilian should he just show his regular ID due to the visa-free regime. As a result, Ronaldinho and Roberto ended up in prison where they were meant to stay for 6 months. Even the €1.5 million bail was turned down by the court. However, you can't say Ronaldinho had a bad time. He won the prison tournament, celebrated his 40th birthday and had a lot of fun with the fellow inmates. And his cell actually looked like a hotel room. The Brazilian spent a month there, then he was placed under house arrest and in August he left Paraguay after having paid a €200,000 fine. We should say that afterwards Ronaldinho came to his senses and made some money as well. The attention from the media helped him sign a number of advertisement contracts. He also opened a record studio and in total made about €7,000. Centre forward Eric Cantona. We remember the Frenchman for both his football skills and his temper, as Eric would show his nature on and off the pitch. But the most memorable incident took place during the Crystal Palace Man United game in January 1995. Throughout the game, Cantona was being fooled repeatedly, and the things were about to get heated as even Ferguson wasn't able to reason with him. At the beginning of the second half, Eric was shown a red card for a brutal foul. While he was leaving the pitch, he heard a Palace fan taunting him and telling him to go back to France. Generally, Cantona wouldn't mind that, but that time he lost his rag. The photo of the Frenchman jumping over the fence to beat the 20-year-old fan became iconic. The stewards managed to prevent a fight, and Cantona went down to the police station. "If I want to kick a fan, I do it. I'm not a role model." That's how it was explained by Cantona himself. At first, Ferguson intended to terminate the Frenchman's contract at once, but his wife Katie convinced him not to change his mind. Cantona, in his turn, got a £20,000 fine, and then he got another £10,000 fine off his salary, as he was also banned till September. As for the court, it sentenced Cantona to 2 weeks in prison. Shortly, his lawyer got Eric's sentence dismissed, and instead Cantona got 120 hours community service. As we can see, the footballers violate the law much more often than it seems. We can't mention everyone in one video, but there were also the likes of Mickey Thomas, the Starostin brothers, Edward Streltsov, Georgi Demetradze, Robinho, Joey Barton, and some others. What is the detention you remember best? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video. See ya!